The massive Imperial flagship Dominion glided to a halt at the edge of the Sol system. Its silver hull gleamed against the backdrop of distant stars as smaller vessels took formation around it. Admiral Dorn stood on the command deck, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the polished floor. "Status report," he ordered, eyes fixed on the main view screen showing a small blue planet in the distance. "All systems nominal, Admiral," replied his first officer. "We've reached the outer boundary of the system. Earth is approximately 4 billion miles ahead." Dorn nodded with satisfaction. This was his 57th planetary integration mission. The Empire had grown to span over 3,000 star systems, and Earth would soon become the newest addition to their collection. Intelligence reports classified the humans as a developing species with limited interplanetary capabilities. They had barely explored their own neighborhood. "Launch the standard probe array," Dorn commanded. "Let's get our preliminary scans before we make our approach." 6 sleek probes shot from the Dominion's forward bay, their engines flaring blue as they accelerated toward the inner system. Dorn watched their progress on the tactical display, already thinking about his victory speech. Another primitive world to bring under Imperial protection and guidance. The bridge crew worked quietly around him, monitoring systems and preparing the diplomatic packages that would soon be transmitted to Earth's leaders. The Empire's approach was always the same: demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority, offer protection and advancement, and watch as the new world fell in line. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, her voice tense. "The probes, they're gone." Dorn turned sharply. "Malfunction?" "No, sir. They were functioning perfectly until they reached approximately 3.8 billion miles from Earth. Then they simply disappeared. All 6, simultaneously." A murmur of confusion spread across the bridge. Dorn frowned and moved to the sensor station. "Show me the telemetry." The officer brought up the data stream. The probes had been sending back normal readings, then nothing. No explosion, no distress signal, no debris field. Just 6 advanced Imperial probes vanishing, as if they had never existed. "Launch a second wave," Dorn ordered. "Different trajectory." 4 more probes launched. The bridge crew watched in silence as they streaked toward the invisible boundary. At precisely the same distance as before, they disappeared without trace. "This is impossible," the first officer whispered. Before Dorn could respond, every screen on the bridge flickered. The ship's artificial intelligence spoke in an uncharacteristically flat tone. "Incoming transmission. Origin. Sol system. Method. Unknown." "Display it," Dorn ordered, straightening his uniform. A simple text message appeared on the main screen. "The SOL system is TLOSD to Imperial vessels. Approach at your peril." Dorn stared at the message, speechless for the first time in his 30-year career. In all his missions, no civilization had ever detected their presence before formal contact, let alone destroyed their probes or sent such a direct warning. "Can we trace the signal?" he asked finally. The communications officer shook her head. "There's nothing to trace, sir. It didn't come through any recognizable channel. The message simply appeared in our systems. Scan the entire system. I want to know what we're dealing with." The crew scrambled to comply, directing every sensor toward Earth and its neighboring planets. Minutes passed in tense silence. "Sir," the sensor officer reported, "we're not detecting any advanced defense systems or unusual technology. Earth appears exactly as our intelligence described. Primitive orbital stations, basic propulsion technology, no unified planetary defense grid." Dorn paced the command deck, his mind racing. In all Imperial history, no world had ever refused contact. The standard protocol had no contingency for rejection. "Send a single communication drone," he decided. "Program it to stop short of the boundary. Let them know we come in peace." As the drone launched, Dorn gazed at the distant blue planet. Something unprecedented was happening here. Either Earth possessed technology far beyond Imperial understanding, or they were bluffing spectacularly. Either way, Admiral Dorn knew one thing for certain. His 57th mission would be unlike any that had come before. Intelligence Officer Lena moved through the quiet corridors of the Dominion's research wing, her steps quick and determined. 3 days had passed since the unexpected warning from Earth, and Admiral Dorn had tasked her with finding answers. The doors to the analysis chamber slid open, revealing the circular room where images of Earth rotated on display screens. 5 analysts looked up as she entered. "Show me what we've learned," Lena said, taking her place at the central console. The lead analyst, Officer Reed, brought up a historical timeline. "We've reviewed all Imperial records on Earth. Until 50 years ago, everything matched expectations. Primitive nuclear technology, limited space travel, divided global politics. And then," Lena prompted. Reed frowned. "Then their development becomes unusual. Their satellite networks suddenly improved, but not in ways we expected. Instead of expanding outward, they seemed to focus inward. The screen displayed Earth's orbital space, a collection of seemingly ordinary satellites and small stations. Our passive scans detect normal communication patterns," Reed continued, "but there are energy signatures we can't identify. They don't match any known technology in the Imperial database." Lena studied the readings. Could they have received help from another spacefaring race? "Unlikely," Reed replied. "We've controlled this sector for centuries. No other advanced civilization could have reached Earth without our knowledge." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans had developed something new, something the Empire had never seen before. "What about our stealth ship?" Lena asked, referring to the small reconnaissance vessel they had sent toward Earth yesterday, designed to be undetectable by primitive scanning systems. Reed's expression darkened. "We lost contact exactly where the probes disappeared. It never sent a distress signal." Lena tapped her fingers against the console. An empire that spanned thousands of worlds, with technology refined over millennia, was being blocked by a species that had barely left their own planet. "Admiral Dorn is waiting for answers I don't have," she said quietly. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Defense Council gathered in a windowless room deep beneath the North American continent. 12 people sat around a circular table, holographic displays floating above its surface. Director Thomas examined the latest scans of the Imperial fleet. "They've maintained position at the boundary. No further attempts to breach our space since the stealth ship." General Wright, a sturdy woman with silver hair, nodded. "The shield is holding perfectly. The question is what they'll try next." "They'll send a diplomat," said Dr. Kane, the Council's chief scientist. "The Empire always follows the same pattern. Technology demonstration, then diplomacy, then forced integration if necessary." Director Thomas manipulated the hologram, zooming in on the Imperial flagship. "We've been monitoring their communications. They're confused, possibly even frightened. They don't understand how we detected them or stopped their probes." "Should we tell them?" asked a younger council member. "No," Thomas replied firmly. "Our advantage lies in their ignorance. For centuries, Earth chose isolation while the Empire expanded. They took what they wanted from thousands of worlds, believing no one could stop them." General Wright stood and walked to the wall-sized display, showing Earth's defense grid, invisible to Imperial sensors, but clear to everyone in the room. A network of quantum nodes surrounded the planet and extended throughout the solar system, creating an impenetrable barrier the Empire couldn't even detect. "The shield is just our first line of defense," she said. "If they force the issue, we have options they can't imagine." Dr. Kane brought up a new image, the remains of the Imperial probes and stealth ship, carefully collected and stored in a secure facility on the moon. "Their technology is impressive but fundamentally limited," he explained. "They've refined the same principles for thousands of years without true innovation. We took a different path." Director Thomas closed the displays with a wave of his hand. "The question now is how far we're willing to go to maintain our independence. The Empire doesn't accept rejection. They'll escalate until they either succeed or determine the cost is too high. Then we need to make sure they understand the cost, General Wright said, quickly and clearly. The council members nodded in agreement. Earth had prepared for this moment for generations. The Empire was about to learn that the small blue planet was not what it appeared to be. The neutral space station, Crossroads, hung in empty space exactly halfway between the Imperial fleet and the boundary of the Sol system. It was an old trading post, abandoned decades ago when shipping routes changed, but now repurposed for a historic meeting. Ambassador Trell adjusted his formal robes as he waited in the station's main chamber. Behind him stood 4 Imperial guards and 2 cultural specialists. The Empire had never faced rejection before, and Trell was determined to correct this diplomatic anomaly. "They're late," muttered one of the specialists. "No," Trell replied, checking the timepiece on his wrist. "They have exactly 3 minutes remaining." As if on cue, a light flashed on the docking bay indicator. A small vessel had arrived, though no one had detected its approach. The Imperial guards tensed, hands moving toward their weapons. The door slid open, and a single human male entered. He wore a simple dark uniform with no visible insignia or rank markers. He carried no weapons and no visible technology. "I am Captain James," the human said in perfect Imperial standard, a language that should have been unknown to Earth. "I speak for Earth's Defense Council." Trell recovered quickly from his surprise and stepped forward with the traditional Imperial greeting gesture. "Ambassador Trell of the Galactic Empire, we are pleased that Earth has agreed to this dialogue." Captain James made no attempt to return the gesture. "Let's be clear, Ambassador. We're here to deliver a message, not to negotiate Earth's entry into your empire." The bluntness was shocking. Most species approached the Empire with reverence, even fear. This human showed neither. Trell motioned toward the conference table. "Perhaps we should sit and discuss your concerns." Once seated, Trell activated a small projector, displaying images of prosperous Imperial worlds. "The Empire brings advancement, protection, and unity to all member worlds. Earth would benefit greatly from." "The Empire," James interrupted, "has conquered 3,274 inhabited worlds. You offer technology in exchange for resources. Worlds that resist are subjugated through military force or economic pressure. Your last 3 expansions triggered civil wars on the target planets. The Empire then moved in as peacekeepers." Absolute silence fell over the room. The information James had just casually shared was classified at the highest Imperial levels. "How could you possibly know?" began one of the specialists before Trell silenced him with a sharp gesture. "We've been watching," James said simply, "for longer than you might think." Trell's diplomatic training kicked in. "Whatever intelligence you've gathered has been misinterpreted. The Empire brings peace and the current Emperor has 3 rebellions threatening his central systems," James continued. "Your military is stretched thin. Your economic model requires constant expansion to prevent collapse. Your technological development has stagnated over the last century." The Imperial guards shifted uncomfortably. Everything this human said was true, but even most Imperial citizens didn't know these facts. "What is it you want?" Trell asked, abandoning his prepared speech. "Nothing," James replied. "Earth wants nothing from the Empire except to be left alone. We have chosen a different path of development, and we have no interest in joining your collective." Trell leaned forward. "No world can stand alone in this galaxy. You need our protection." James smiled for the first time. "Do we? Your probes and stealth ship encountered our first-level defensive measures. Those were automated systems, Ambassador, not our actual defenses." He placed a small device on the table. It projected a real-time image of the Imperial flagship Dominion. "Right now, we could disable your entire fleet without destroying it. We could access your databases, shut down your weapons, or simply send you home. But that would be impolite." Trell stared at the human, searching for any sign of deception or bluff. He found none. If this is true, Trell said carefully, why not join the Empire as a leading world with such technology? Because we've seen what the Empire does with advanced technology, James cut in. It's used to control, not elevate. James stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Our message is simple. The Sol system is off-limits to Imperial vessels and personnel. This is not negotiable. Respect our boundaries, and we'll respect yours. As the human turned to leave, Trell called after him. Admiral Dorn will not accept this answer. James paused at the doorway. Then Admiral Dorn will receive a clearer demonstration. I hope that won't be necessary. He departed as mysteriously as he had arrived, leaving the Imperial delegation with far more questions than answers. Colonel Vex studied the readouts on his tactical display as his team of 12 elite Imperial Special Forces prepared for their mission. The dropship hovered at the very edge of the boundary that had destroyed the probes, its stealth systems operating at maximum capacity. Final equipment check, Vex ordered, his voice low and steady. The soldiers verified their adaptive camouflage suits, neural disruptors, and specialized scanning equipment. Each member of the team had participated in at least 30 covert planetary infiltrations. They were the best the Empire had to offer. Remember, Vex said as they gathered for final briefing, we're here to locate and analyze Earth's defensive systems, not to engage. Find the technology, document it, and return. The Empire needs to understand what we're facing. Despite Admiral Dorn's reluctance to risk his best operatives, the diplomatic failure had left few options. Imperial intelligence insisted that no planetary defense could be perfect. There had to be a way through. Launching in 30 seconds, the pilot announced, we've identified what appears to be a gap in the boundary over Earth's southern pole. The dropship accelerated silently toward the invisible barrier. As they approached the supposed gap, Vex felt his heart rate increase. If they were wrong. Boundary crossed, the pilot reported with surprise. No detection so far. The team exchanged looks of cautious optimism as the ship entered the Sol system and began its rapid descent toward Earth. The planet grew larger on their view screens, blue oceans and white clouds coming into focus. Entering atmosphere in 3 minutes, the pilot said. Target landing zone is an uninhabited region designated as Antarctica. Minimal human presence detected. Vex nodded approvingly. The vast, frozen continent would provide perfect cover for their initial reconnaissance. From there, they could deploy sensor drones to locate the defensive installations. The ship passed through the upper atmosphere without incident. Vex allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps Earth's warnings had been a bluff after all. 2 minutes to touchdown, the pilot announced. Suddenly, every light in the ship flickered. The engines cut out momentarily before restarting. What was that? Vex demanded. Unknown, sir, the pilot replied, hands moving frantically over the controls. All systems reporting normal now. But, wait, this isn't right. Vex moved to the cockpit and looked through the view screen. Instead of the expected ice fields of Antarctica, they were flying over a lush green landscape with mountains in the distance. Navigation error, he asked. No, sir. According to our systems, we're exactly where we should be. The ship landed automatically in a clearing. The external sensors showed Earth normal atmosphere, moderate temperature, and no immediate threats. But nothing matched their intelligence about Antarctica. Defensive positions, Vex ordered as the team prepared to exit. Something's wrong. The hatch opened, and the soldiers moved out with practiced precision, forming a perimeter around the ship. Vex stepped onto the soil of Earth, his weapon ready. The clearing was surrounded by tall trees unlike any in the Imperial database. The sky above was blue, but somehow different. Vex activated his scanner, which reported normal readings but couldn't identify their precise location. Spread out, he commanded. Search pattern alpha. The team began to move toward the tree line when a voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere at once. "That won't be necessary, Colonel Vex." The soldiers froze, weapons raised toward the unseen speaker. "Welcome to Earth," the voice continued. "Or rather, welcome to our reception area." A man appeared at the edge of the clearing. He wore casual clothing and carried no visible weapons. He walked toward them with relaxed confidence. "My name is Marcus," he said, stopping a few meters away. "Head of Earth Security." "How do you know who I am?" Vex demanded, his weapon trained on the human. Marcus smiled. "We knew you were coming before you left your ship. The gap you found in our boundary was created specifically for you." "Impossible," Vex said. "Our mission was classified at the highest level." "Nothing in your empire is beyond our observation," Marcus replied. "You're currently in a controlled environment, not actually on Earth's surface, but close enough for our conversation." Vex signaled his team to maintain their positions. "What do you want?" "Just to talk," Marcus said, "and to show you enough to make our position clear to your leaders." He gestured around them. "This facility exists to intercept unauthorized visitors. You and your team are perfectly safe, but you won't be leaving until we've finished our conversation." Vex realized with growing unease that the Empire had severely underestimated Earth's capabilities. Whatever technology these humans possessed, it was far beyond Imperial understanding. "I'm listening," he said, lowering his weapon slightly. Marcus nodded. "Good. Let's begin with why Earth has chosen to remain separate from your empire." Admiral Dorn stared at the tactical display with growing frustration. 2 weeks had passed since Colonel Vex and his team returned from Earth with disturbing news. They had been contained, studied, and released with a warning, all without being able to gather any useful intelligence about Earth's defensive capabilities. "The Emperor demands results," Dorn muttered to himself. His second-in-command, Commander Rel, approached cautiously. "The battle group is in position, Admiral. 5 destroyers and the heavy cruiser Invincible are awaiting your command." Dorn nodded. After careful consideration, he had decided on a show of force. Not a full attack, but a demonstration that the Empire would not be denied. The 6 warships positioned themselves in a hexagonal formation just outside the boundary. "All ships report weapons charged and shields at maximum," Rel reported. "Good." Dorn straightened his uniform. "Begin the approach. Standard combat speed." On the command deck, officers monitored their stations as the battle group moved forward. The invisible line that had destroyed their probes lay directly ahead. "Boundary crossing in 5 seconds," announced the navigation officer. Dorn held his breath. This would either force Earth to reveal its defenses or prove their warnings were merely bluffs. "Boundary crossed," the officer confirmed. "All ships report normal operations." A murmur of relief spread across the command deck. Perhaps the humans had reconsidered their position. The ships continued their advance toward the inner system. "Distance to Earth, 350 million miles and closing," reported the navigation officer. Dorn permitted himself a small smile. "Open a channel to all ships. Prepare tow." "Admiral," interrupted the sensor officer, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from the Invincible." Before Dorn could respond, the communications system crackled. "Dominion, this is Captain Voss of the Invincible. We're experiencing power fluctuations across all systems. Engines are losing efficiency." Similar reports quickly came in from the 5 destroyers. No alarms had triggered, no attacks had been detected, but every ship in the battle group was experiencing the same gradual power drain. "Full stop," Dorn ordered. "Defensive positions." The ships halted their advance, but the mysterious effect continued. Lights dimmed throughout the fleet. Weapons systems reported decreasing power levels. Life support remained functional, but operated at reduced capacity. No projectiles or energy weapons detected, the defensive officer reported, confusion evident in his voice. "We're not under attack in any way we can identify." "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from Inside our ship, the main view screen activated without command. A woman appeared, her expression calm and professional. "Admiral Dorn," she said, "I am Director Ellis of Earth Defense. You were warned not to approach our system." Dorn stepped forward. "Your interference with Imperial vessels is an act of war." Ellis shook her head slightly. "No, Admiral. We have not damaged your ships or harmed your personnel. We have merely demonstrated that your technology operates within our sphere of influence." As if to emphasize her point, the lights on the command deck dimmed further. Backup systems engaged automatically, but they too began to drain. "The effect you're experiencing is temporary and controllable," Ellis continued. "We could disable your fleet entirely or destroy it if that was our intention. Instead, we chose restraint." Dorn struggled to maintain his composure. No civilization in Imperial history had demonstrated such capabilities. "What do you want?" "Exactly what we've already stated," Ellis replied. "Leave the Sol system and do not return. Earth has chosen independence." The power drain suddenly stopped. Systems began to recover, returning to normal operation. "Your ships are being released," Ellis said. "You may return to Imperial space with our message to your Emperor. Earth is not a threat to the Empire, but we will defend our sovereignty without hesitation." The screen went blank. Dorn turned to his officers, who awaited his command. "Admiral," Commander Rell said quietly, "engine diagnostics are showing modifications to our drive systems." "What kind of modifications?" Dorn demanded. "Some form of limiter," Rell explained. "The ships can still reach Imperial space, but any attempt to return to the Sol system will result in complete drive failure." Dorn stared out at the distant blue planet, barely visible at this range. Whatever technology these humans possessed, it went beyond anything in Imperial understanding. For the first time in his career, Admiral Dorn gave the order he never thought he would issue. "All ships, set course for Imperial space. We're withdrawing." The Great Hall of Imperial Knowledge stood at the center of the Empire's capital world. Its massive crystal dome allowed starlight to illuminate the ancient texts and modern data systems that contained the collective wisdom of thousands of civilizations. Professor Kai moved slowly between the archive stations, his aged frame belying the sharp mind that had made him the Empire's foremost historian. For 3 months since the Earth incident, he had been summoned daily to brief the Imperial Council on his findings. Today, he would present his complete report. The council chamber buzzed with whispered conversations as 12 of the most powerful individuals in the galaxy took their seats around the circular table. Emperor Lux himself presided, his ornate chair slightly elevated above the others. "Professor," the Emperor said, his voice silencing the room, "you claim to have discovered the truth about Earth. We are listening." Kai activated the central display, showing a timeline of Earth's development. "Your Majesty, honored council members, I have spent these months piecing together fragments of information from our oldest archives, comparing them with recent observations, and consulting with our leading scientists. What we have discovered changes everything we thought we knew about human development." He brought up an image of Earth from several centuries earlier. Most species follow a similar pattern of advancement. They'd master their planet, develop space travel, expand to nearby worlds, and eventually encounter the Empire. Humans began this same journey, but something changed their course. Kai displayed readings from Earth's early space age. Approximately 200 years ago, humans were divided into competing nations, fighting for resources and power. They had basic space capabilities and were beginning to explore their own solar system. Our projections indicated they would reach interstellar travel within a century and become suitable for Imperial integration. The image shifted to show mysterious energy patterns. Then they made a discovery that altered their entire civilization. While our scientists can't identify the exact nature of this discovery, the evidence suggests they developed a fundamentally different approach to energy, matter, and information. The scientific counselor leaned forward. "Different how?" While the Empire's technology is based on manipulating physical forces, humans appear to have developed methods to manipulate the underlying structure of reality itself, Kai explained. Instead of building more powerful engines to travel through space, they found ways to influence space directly. Instead of creating stronger computers, they developed systems that interface with consciousness and quantum states. He displayed a comparison between Imperial and Earth technology. Our approach has always been to improve what we know works. Bigger ships, stronger weapons, faster computers. We've refined our technology for millennia, becoming masters of the physical world. But humans took an entirely different path. They went inward instead of outward. "What do you mean by inward?" asked the military counselor. While we expanded across the galaxy, humans focused on understanding the fundamental nature of existence. They developed technologies we can barely comprehend because they operate on principles we've never explored. Kai brought up the records from the Imperial fleet's encounter with Earth. What Admiral Dorn experienced wasn't an attack in the traditional sense. Earth didn't fire weapons or deploy countermeasures. They simply adjusted the parameters within which our technology operates. Murmurs spread through the council. The implications were staggering. "Are you suggesting," the Emperor said carefully, "that humans possess capabilities beyond the Empire's?" Kai nodded solemnly. "In certain domains, yes. They cannot match our scale or manufacturing capacity, but they appear to have mastered aspects of reality we have never even studied." The economic counselor scoffed. "If they possess such remarkable technology, why do they remain isolated on their homeworld? Why not expand as all species do?" "That," Kai said, "is perhaps the most important question. Our analysis suggests they observed our expansion and deliberately chose a different path. They watched as we incorporated world after world into the Empire, and they decided they wanted no part of it." He displayed a final image, a map of known space with the Sol system highlighted. Humans aren't confined to Earth because they lack the ability to leave. They stay because they choose to. Their technology allows them to observe the galaxy without physically traveling through it. They've been watching us for generations while remaining undetected. A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the council members absorbed this information. "And now?" the Emperor asked quietly. "Now," Professor K replied, "we must accept that we have encountered something unprecedented. A civilization that doesn't want what we offer, doesn't fear what we threaten, and possesses capabilities we don't understand." The Emperor looked troubled. "Can they threaten the Empire?" "They already have," Kai said simply. "Not with weapons, but with ideas. The very existence of an alternative to Imperial integration challenges the foundation of our society." The Imperial Senate chamber fell into complete silence as the Earth transmission ended. 5,000 representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for this unprecedented event. Emperor Lux sat motionless on his throne, his face betraying no emotion as all eyes turned to him. The holographic image of Director Thomas from Earth Defense had just finished delivering the most extraordinary message in Imperial history. "Replay the final segment," the Emperor commanded. The central projection system activated once more, showing the human's calm face. The Sol system and Earth had no interest in conquest, trade, or alliance with the Empire, Thomas repeated. "We have observed your civilization for generations and have chosen a different path of development. We request formal recognition of our sovereign space and permanent exclusion from Imperial expansion. To demonstrate our sincerity and capabilities, we have temporarily adjusted the weapons systems in your primary military installations." The message paused, allowing the Senate to absorb his words. "As confirmation of this demonstration, your military commanders are now discovering that precision targeting functions have been disabled across your fleet. No personnel have been harmed, no other systems affected. Full functionality will return in exactly 1 hour from the end of this transmission. We could have done far more, but chose restraint instead." Thomas's expression remained neutral, neither threatening nor pleading. Earth could have conquered the Empire if that were our desire. Instead, we simply wish to be left alone to follow our own course. The choice before you is simple: acknowledge our independence and maintain peaceful coexistence, or continue attempting to integrate us and face escalating demonstrations of our resolve. The hologram faded, leaving the Senate in stunned silence. Admiral Dorn stepped forward from his position near the throne. "Your Majesty, I must report that the humans' claims are accurate. Weapons targeting systems across our fleet and defensive platforms have been temporarily disabled. Our best technicians cannot determine how this was accomplished." Emperor Lux rose slowly from his throne, his ancient eyes scanning the vast chamber. For 10,000 years, the Empire had expanded without meaningful resistance. Now, a single world had not only rejected them but demonstrated power beyond imperial understanding. "Professor Kai," the Emperor called, "explain to the Senate what you have told the Council." The elderly historian moved to the central platform, his voice steady as he summarized months of research into minutes of clarity. "The humans have developed along a different technological path than any known civilization. While we mastered the physical universe, they explored the boundaries between energy, matter, and consciousness. Their technology doesn't compete with ours. It operates on entirely different principles." Murmurs spread through the chamber as senators tried to grasp the implications. "How can one planet resist an empire of thousands of worlds?" demanded a senator from the outer territories. "Because their advancement isn't measured in size or quantity," Kai explained. "They don't need vast fleets or countless soldiers. Their capabilities appear to function regardless of distance or conventional defenses." The chamber erupted in debate until the Emperor raised his hand for silence. "We face an unprecedented situation," Emperor Lux said. "For the first time, we encounter a civilization that doesn't need us, fear us, or want what we offer." He turned to his chief diplomat. "Draft the Sol Exclusion Treaty, formal recognition of Earth's independence, and a binding agreement preventing Imperial vessels from entering their system." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Never before had the Empire formally recognized another power's sovereignty. "Your Majesty," protested the military counselor, "this will be seen as weakness." "No," the Emperor replied firmly. "It will be seen as wisdom. We have encountered something beyond our current understanding. The truly weak would deny this reality and rush toward destruction." As the Senate continued its heated discussions, a young senator approached Professor Kai at the edge of the chamber. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "Have they really found another way?" Kai nodded. "They chose knowledge over expansion, understanding over control. Their path diverged from ours centuries ago, and they managed to remain free," she whispered, the concept almost foreign to her imperial upbringing. "More than free," Kai replied. "They found something we've forgotten to seek." Throughout the Empire in the days that followed, news of the Sol Exclusion Treaty spread across thousands of worlds. The official explanation cited unique circumstances and mutual respect, but unofficial accounts told of Earth's mysterious powers in different paths. On countless worlds, people looked up at the stars and, for the first time in 10 millennia, wondered if the Imperial way was the only way. A single blue planet, choosing to stand apart, had planted a seed of possibility that would quietly grow throughout the galaxy. The Empire would continue, vast and powerful, but something had changed forever. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, an alternative existed.